Good morning and welcome to COVID313 Community Coalition for Families and Children. We are so pleased to have you join us, but we're doing something a little bit different over the next 2 weeks. We're taking a break so that we can begin to read what you've been sharing with us, look at the chats, look at all the phenomenal things that are happening at this moment and this time, and constantly reassessing our facts, our resources, and our support to you so we can make sure that we're relevant. But we have something really special for you over the next 2 weeks while we're planning our new programming. And that is we're going to be giving you what we call our best ofs, moments and clips from some of our previous editions over 14 weeks. We've been coming to you for 14 weeks with facts, with love, with support and information. And some experts, all of them kind and ready to share their information and knowledge with you because knowledge is power. And speaking of power, one of the things that makes this programming so powerful is our entire coalition, which is comprised of educators, of faith-based organizations, of parents, DPTV, and many others coming together. We have translators. We are making sure that our information is coming to you in different languages and making sure that those who are hearing impaired also have an opportunity to participate. So our coalition is committed and inclusive. And so I want to make sure that you have a chance to also know the names of some of our phenomenal translators. And I'm going to pause for a moment because I want to make sure that you still have the opportunity to go to a Facebook and do the chat or to text information into us. And if you'd like to text any questions to us, you can send them to 313-288-2082. That's 313-288-2082. We always still want to hear from you. So I'm going to first start off by ask for Cindy, would you translate, Cindy Gamboa, will you translate all this for Spanish for us?
Hola, si necesita traducción en español, por favor hable al 313-626-7440, 313-626-7440.
Thank you, Cindy. And for our Arabic translation, we have Saeed Dada. Saeed, would you translate into Arabic, please?
إن كنت بحاجة للترجمة إلى اللغة العربية، الرجاء الاتصال على الرقم 313-241-7030. الرقم مجددا 313-241-7030. وشكرا.
Thank you, Saeed. Let me tell you what's coming up. We all know in this moment, we have had a phenomenal, hundreds of thousands of people have hit the streets to say Black Lives Matter. And we covered that topic too. What we're calling it is the George Floyd discussion. Make sure that you tune in for that. Also, we had Hope Starts Here. Hope Starts Here is a wonderful citywide initiative that focuses on pregnant families to children age 8. And it's all about bringing different systems together to make sure that Detroit children are thriving. So we want you to join us for what Hope Starts Here calls 6 a day. Parents, make sure you tune in for that. Also, we'll be having Michelle Madison talking about trauma and coping. While I'm smiling, we know the reality of COVID. Underneath the embedded racism that we see, underneath the ongoing health disparities, there's sadness, there's trauma, because we are all being affected by this disease. And to help us think about that and to cope with it and to help our children cope with it, we want you to please join us for Michelle Madison, because she'll be talking about how we can handle better the coping mechanisms. And while we're talking about coping, we're also so aware that many of us have lost loved ones. And how do you grieve in this time where you're Zooming on a funeral? How do you say goodbye when you can't do a hug? All of us are trying to struggle with that new reality. And so we have Dominique Walker. She'll be coming to us to talk about grief and how do we talk about this grief with our children. And as we always want to make sure that we have an integrated approach that when we talk about health, we automatically talk about mental health. When we talk about mental health, we talk about physical health, because the last I look, our heads and our bodies are connected. So to keep this connection and looking at what's healthy for us, we're always so pleased to share with you Dr. Oveta Fuller. Dr. Fuller is a virologist at University of Michigan and has been a profound voice for us to talk about what really is the intricacies of this disease and how does it attack our bodies, and what do we need to know about it as we think about our children, and when we read the papers and we listen to the news and realize now that there are many more young people being affected. What does that mean? So please tune in for Dr. Fuller talking to us about that. But while we're talking about these heavy issues with our kids, we've got to have some light moments. And while we're talking about great activities, something we all can use is something that keeps us calm, still, the ability to find our power and move forward. So every week we are bringing you Kimberly, who is our awesome yoga instructor. So make sure, if nothing else, you're wearing comfortable clothes and ready to work out with Playworks and then with yoga. And consistent with us trying to make sure, family, that we're responding to the information we need, what our hearts need, what we need to do to stay physically healthy. We also are celebrating the diversity of our coalition. And one of the ways that we celebrated that was with a CINCO de MAYO program. You'll certainly enjoy that clip. So as you think about coming back with us, please do. We're staying relevant. We're focusing in on issues. Black Lives Matter, but what does that mean? What does it mean in terms of systems change? What does it mean in terms of defunding the police? What does that really mean? So come back, join us for our best ofs. Thank you so much. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay strong. Be blessed. We would not be who we are as the COVID Coalition, representing change agents, community organizations, faith-based organizations, and foundations, if we didn't stop and say, enough is enough. And I'd like to share with you the reality that what we see in the streets in terms of police brutality is part of a much longer and historical continuum of depression. But one artist brings this to mind, and no doubt you've heard this. It's the question, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or does it fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar all over, syrupy sweet? Or maybe this dream, it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? We're here with you today to talk about both the history, the context, and the explosion of power and rebellion and pain and frustration and hope that is amongst all of us, not only in the United States, but so wonderfully across the world, are in this moment with you. And we are here in this moment with you as well.
I am a mother of two sons, two Black sons. Listen to that, two Black African-American sons. I don't even have to say anything else behind that statement because you already know what it means. And why is that? I'd say it's because America has spent too many years filling in the rest of the sentence when it comes to Blackness in this country, especially Black boys, Black men. In this country, Blackness has been the substitute for all things criminal. Anyone showing up in Black skin seems to trigger the myth of danger. You don't believe it? I got a couple examples for you. A Black man on an elevator or walking by. Notice a woman clenching her purse a little bit tighter? Or what about Black teenagers, particularly Black boys, hanging out at the local mall? They're considered to be a gang or even thugs. Or what about a group of Black males on the front porch of a residence or in front of a gas station or a store just talking? there's something illegal got to be going on, right? They got to be doing something. Or I think the worst insult of all, what about wearing a hoodie in public? Remember that? Imagine a simple fashion statement became a mark of death because it was made to be the identifying factor of being criminal and Black. Apparently, when Blackness shows up, a dangerous threat shows up too. And this threat is not just perceived by some in law enforcement, it's private citizens too. I mean, just going for a jog, barbecuing in the park, sitting in the lobby of a hotel, even cashing a discrimination lawsuit check at one's own bank is reason enough to be suspicious and call the police. This country has attached value to race. In fact, when Blackness shows up, too often the individual is not even seen at all. Black skin is made to feel invisible, discounted. Now, I want you to pause for a second, because I don't want you to get intellectually dishonest on me right now and start saying that I don't see race. Yes, you do. We all do. How could you not? Race is embedded in the very fabric and psyche of our being. In this country, it has become the American way. The historical racial teachings and messaging says Black people are lazy, poor, incapable of feeling pain, unteachable, unintelligent, great entertainers, great sports players, lustful savages, physically strong, and dangerous. And just in case you don't know where all that came from, during the era of slavery, phony science and unsupported medical opinions were used to justify slavery and ultimately solidify these labels. Black skin became synonymous with abnormal, dumb, childlike, and having a need to be governed, ruled, subjugated, inferior. Unfortunately, these same labels continue to fuel white supremacy, racist attitudes, and racist perceptions to this day. So, as a Black mother raising Black children, I'm saying to you, we can no longer be comfortable being silent. Don't just let this stuff happen in front of you. Confront it. Confront the differential treatment, racial slurs, and sideline conversations.
I am Reverend Larry L. Simmons Sr. I'm senior because I am the father of 8 sons in a blended family. My wife brought 3 and I brought 5 to our family. 5 sons. I've been a Black man for 73 years in America. I am a follower of Jesus. And I am pissed off. There is a rage that we all share as men. It's a rage that we tuck behind our ties and our Brooks Brothers suits or our wherever we get them. We tuck it behind our coveralls. We tuck it behind our smiles. We tuck it away, but it seethes in us because when we are young and thrown up against a wall and told by police officers, I don't want to see anything but elbows and when we are grabbed by our genitals with no recourse and have jokes made about the size of our genitals. These are not made up stories. This is my life. This is what Larry Simmons lived. And I'm going to tell you, most of my friends who walked this path with me are long dead. They died from drug overdose and they died from murder. This rage first turns in. We fuel it, it eats us. But sometimes, like Langston Hughes says, it explodes. And what you are seeing today in the street is the righteous anger of centuries of abuse. I remember Mark Clark. I remember those babies now being held in pens, captives at the border of this country. And we should have been in the street 7 months ago when they started caging these babies like we're in the street today. And that rage that we witnessed over and over and over has spelled out. Let me tell you something. The first thing your oppressor will try to take from you, any oppressor, is the right to be angry and express it. Well, I'm here today to tell you, you got a reason to be mad, and don't let nobody tell you that you shouldn't. Yes, we should protest. Yes, we should pour out into the street. But this is a moment for us to build. I am so encouraged by the leadership of these young people who will speak truth to power. And so as a Black man, 73 years in, the father of 8 sons, the father of 8 grandsons, I want to say thank you. Thank you, young people. And don't let anybody tell you that you should shut down or shut up. Stand up. We've had enough. We've had enough.
This poem is for Black boys. In order for something to receive protection under the Endangered Species Protection Act, it must be endangered or threatened by at least one of the following factors. 1, a decrease in natural habitat. 2, inadequate protection from man-made factors affecting its survival. 3, overutilization for scientific or educational purposes. See, one of 3 of these threats would save an elephant, a rhino, a spider. But Black boys get natural habitat gentrified. Black boys be subject of Tuskegee experiments. Black boys learn to run with their hands up, heads low, and still ain't made no protection list. We've demanded no action. I'm raising a Black boy, and sometimes I pull his clothes out and search for the bullseye. Sometimes I make him practice holding his hands up real high. Wiggle your finger, son. I've painted his inhaler red so it doesn't resemble a weapon. Cops and robbers have been replaced with cops and Black boys, and you might be tempted to call this a war zone. But let me remind you that in war, both parties are armed. Both know what they're getting into. Both have eyes on their enemy. This is no war. This is hunting. Cops in camouflage, Black boys running free until they don't. How I wish you were the animal you get caught. Instead of my son, I wish you were a rare tree. I would chain myself to you and demand we honor your importance. I call my baby boy Elephant. This is no cute pet name. This is me trying to convince the general public that he ought not be shut down in his prime. This is me calling him anything but a Black boy, anything but the child of a woman named Nkenge. Don't Black mamas have no mercy? No rides to the clinic, no access to birth control. Why we keep having these Black boys who die so young, they mamas buy caskets with baby shower gift cards. Black boys are dying before their school pictures come back. While their coat's still big, we keep lying to them. Baby, you gonna grow into that coat. Black boys ain't growing into anything, ain't feeling nothing but cemeteries. Get funerals, get hashtags, get their pictures on t-shirts, get everything but older. Black boys make the news, make their 12-year-old cousins pallbearers, make hoodies into political statements, make their mamas do more than just consider rioting, make their mamas do more than just consider the riot. When all the Black boys are gone, when we can only find their bones, will we display them in glass cases or take those bones to museums and continue to hang them?
I speak to allies. There are often questions posed. What can I do? And we collectively would like to share a few recommendations. Number 1, in writing, answer this question to yourself. What would it cost you to confront anti-Black comments made by your family and friends in your presence? Let me be clear, this is not a rhetorical exercise. Make the list and take the action. Number 2, if you are going to show up to support Black actions, check in with the leadership and take their instruction on what support they want provided. Leave your personal agendas in the car. Number 3, educate yourself. Learn about implicit bias, the history of slavery, historically and modern, and the impact of systemic racism on African Americans in every space that we enter. Given these recommendations, I encourage all allies to make a plan. Set your schedule and make it happen. Be intentional. Again, take the action. Our allies have listened to us and adopted our recommendations. Please pay close attention as they are modeling the recommendations to listen and follow the leadership of the community on this issue. In this space today, we are modeling what we think is necessary in this moment and to encourage others to do the same.
I struggle with how to even introduce ourselves in this moment. Mexican, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Caribbean, Central and South American, Chicano, Boricua, Indigenous, Afro-Latino, Mestizo, or Hispanic, Latino, Latinx. We aren't even sure what name to call ourselves that isn't rooted in our own oppression. But what we do know is that our history has been intertwined with that of our Black brothers and sisters for the past 500 years. We have all experienced the impact of systemic racism and oppression, but it shows up differently in our different communities. And if we're honest with ourselves, there have been many times when we have also contributed to racism against the Black community. And again, I mentioned Trayvon Martin. There remains a lot of internalized racism and colorism in our community, even between ourselves and within our own family sometimes. We need to have long, hard conversations about our past in order to have a chance of a free future for all of us. So the question in this moment is, how do we show up right now for our Black brothers and sisters? As allies, what is our role right now? How do we follow the leadership of our Black brothers and sisters in this moment?
There's an old axiom we used to express back in the 70s in my early days of activism. We must fight the attempt to divide and conquer us. Thus, we have to educate ourselves and others in order to organize for effective coalition between communities of color. At various times in our history, Latinos have been strong allies with the African-American community to fight for our common rights. But at other times, division over particular interests, as Angie mentioned, colorism, and even racist beliefs have hampered that. That often varies based on the specific Latino ethnic group and historical period, though I definitely do not want to deny or minimize these difficulties. I will focus more on what should lay the basis for increased unity. I believe if you don't know your past, you don't understand the present, and then are not prepared for the future. So, did you know that the majority of people with African and Native American heritage in this side of the world come from and or live south of what is now the Caribbean and South America, Latin America? That the first free Black community in what is now the US was in St. Augustine, Florida during Spanish colonial times. That the taking of Texas in the Mexican-American War, which meant that Mexico lost more than half of its territory to the US to become what we now call the Southwest, that in addition to being a land grab, was a direct prelude to the Civil War 20 years later. That slave owners grabbed more territory to expand their power, and that they had a bad reaction to the fact that by the time of the US Civil War, Mexico already had two Black presidents, Vicente Guerrero and Juan Maria Morelos, and an indigenous Indian president, Benito Juarez. That definitely scared them. That was a threat to them. That the premier institution for nationwide study, a worldwide study, in fact, of the African experience in the world was established by a Puerto Rican immigrant before Puerto Ricans were US citizens, Arturo Alfonso Schomburg. That Thurgood Marshall referred to the successful Mendez case of the late 40s in California and a previous mid-1930s case regarding Mexican Americans in Texas during the famous 1954 Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case that officially eliminated school segregation. That one of the first two Latino communities in Detroit, established in 1918, was an Afro-Puerto Rican community which originally settled in Black Bottom and eventually integrated into Detroit's own African American community. That the AIDS struggle of the late 80s and early 90s in Detroit specifically was essentially an African-American and Latino coalition led by CHAG, AIDS Partnership, Latino Family Services, and others. I could go on, but you get my point about this common history. Let's use this history to guide us in new measures and struggles and realize that we can overcome if we really pay attention to the divisions among us. Thus, in our aim to build a coalition must address the following matters that all have a racial impact on us. The outright coddling of white supremacists by Trump and many elected officials. The lack of a national response to the COVID pandemic, which essentially is hitting our communities the worst. The call to address the call for militarization to quell the current national movement. Even the response to Hurricane Maria's impact on Puerto Rico was devastating, and Puerto Rico's an Afro-Taino nation. Trump was kicking off his presidential campaign, lashed out at Mexicans with racist taunts, and from the very beginning, escalated this racism. We have our work cut out for us, but I'm so inspired by young people, and these are new folks that are to the struggle and veterans who, hopefully can give some guidance. So I thank you for this opportunity.
And thank you for calling on us to continue the conversation with white folks about how we should be contributing to the movement. How I want to start off this message to white people is that racism is not a people of color problem. It's a white people problem. We need to unlearn everything we were taught as white folks in order to undo the ways in which we hold up and benefit from racism. Dismantling white supremacy is our job. We built these systems and we continue to benefit from them. We've been propping them up, so it's time to start to tear them down. It's not enough to simply be not racist. We have to push ourselves to be actively anti-racist. It takes work, it creates tension, but it will ultimately be liberating for ourselves and for our Black and brown siblings. We need to ask ourselves every day, what does it mean to be white in this world, in this country? And then we need to do the work of following Black and brown leadership to dismantle the systems that are harming Black folks, including dismantling the police systems. Today, I'm thinking about Breonna Taylor as we respond to this call to action from our Black colleagues. Again, I want this to be really clear. We must follow the leadership of Black and brown folks as we are fighting. Stop and listen. And as the white folks who are part of the COVID313 coalition, we're being called to action now.
If you are coming to a rally for Black folks, check in with Black leadership before you start using the movement for Black lives to run our own white agendas. We are asking you to listen to the demands and asks of our Black leaders and their response to police accountability. There are many asks out there to donate and to support the campaigns of leaders of color in your own community and across the nation. It is our time to listen and to act on what they're asking of us. Black folks are calling to us to not unpack our white experiences or emotions with Black leadership. Do not have Black folks care for our white tears or our white emotions. Find white friends like myself for that. We are here for you. Don't put that emotional labor on our Black and brown friends. Our role is to show up in the movement for Black lives and to do our work outside of the Black community to show up in a healthy and supportive way. The system of racism is not just the overt racism we often point out, like the Ku Klux Klan. It is the everyday system that is the foundation of our country. The police, our schools, our courts, our homes, our workplaces, everywhere. It is the foundation of how our systems function to benefit white folks. It shows up in our individual interactions and in these systems. That's called white supremacy. And it's on us to tear it down and destroy it. Everywhere we see it, including in ourselves, from the White House to inside our individual bodies. If we aren't fighting that system, we are complicit with the murder of Black lives. That's why I denounce the treatment of Detroit Police Department against Black people, against protesters. And we call for the defunding and divestment from police systems, including school police. White people, join the fight to defund and divest from police. Youth I work with are launching a campaign to defund the police. We urge you to get involved. Ann Braden, a white activist, wrote a quote about 30 years ago, and it said this: "We do have a choice as white people. You don't have to be part of a world of lynchers. You can join another America. We urge you to join the other America with us, other white allies."
We ask you that you interrupt racism in your families and communities. Do not let relatives say racist things. Instead, invite more folks to join the movement. That means we must interrupt racism wherever we see it, in ourselves, in our families, in our workplaces, and in our communities. This also means widening and building our base of white people who are in the movement. We need to call our folks into the movement in our families, faith community, neighborhoods, and workplaces. If we work in an organization where the leadership is predominantly white, we need to actively work to change that balance of power. We must speak up for diversity and against racism and not expect that to be the exclusive responsibility of our Black colleagues. In all these places, we need to question whenever white supremacy and racism show their ugly faces and challenge it. It might feel good to just yell at white people, and we should when we see racism, but we need to spend time with those who are awakening and invite them to be part of this movement, imperfect as they are. That is our work, not the work of people of color.
We all have a part in this movement. It's gonna take us all to dismantle the systems of racism. And it's on us to fight this anti-Blackness. Co-liberation takes all of us. I'm gonna ask all of our allies to turn on your camera. And together, we say, Black Lives Matter.
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 They matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Matter.
La vida
Black
negra
lives
es importante.
matter.
La vida
And I wanna-
negra.
We've had enough.
Black Lives Matter.
And I want to say in Arabic, so مهمة هي حياة السود. Black lives matter.
We have 21 community outreach specialists that are supporting families across the city of Detroit. We're doing that by participating in the 6-a-days. And so, not that parents aren't doing 6-a-days, we're just reminding them of how to take the opportunity to do some fun things with them, with their children. I have a 4 and a 6-year-old, and so I make it my business to acknowledge that we're doing the 6-a-day so that my children are actively participating as well. Another something that we're encouraging parents to do is to use these platforms that we have. Use Zoom, use Messenger to allow your children to have play dates with their friends, because we all know that they miss their friends. And so we want to have the opportunity for them to have play dates as well. But just like our children, parents, we have to have play dates. So please make sure that you are taking care of yourself as well. And you're doing Zooms with your family and friends to make sure that you're in the best headspace to be able to support your children. Because we have gone from just being parent to being teacher, lunch lady, seems like the janitor and everything else. All in a matter of months. And so we want to make sure that parents are in the best space as well. So please take time to visit in these virtual platforms with your friends also. The 6-a-days, we are having fun with them. We are creating photos, we're creating videos that can be shared with families on social media, but we also encourage individuals to do the same. And make sure that you are using the hashtag Hope builds. That's builds with an S. So again, that's Hope Builds. Please use the hashtag so that we can see what you're doing with your families and how you're engaging and doing the 6 days. Because sometimes we don't think we're doing them, but we're absolutely doing them. So I want you to make sure that you're taking the opportunity to share those wonderful experiences with other families and give them some ideas as well. Parents, I want you to, again, don't keep yourself just being the parent. You have to have some time for you. That is so important. It's important to me because I have to absolutely get some time with my friends, with my sisters, and things like that. And so I just wanted to share that with parents because we're talking about our children, but we have to make sure that we're well because when we thrive, our children thrive. And so in this trying time, we want to make sure that parents are equipped and well prepared so that their children can do the same.
So there are 3 things that I'd like to discuss today, very specific to the topics that are discussed in this town hall. One is the idea of tension. So when we feel tension in the body, tension that has no place to go becomes pain. And we're talking about very crucial and important issues within the Black community, the Black and the Brown community, actually. And we're talking about the systemic oppression that has happened to us for decades, and centuries at a time with no place to go. So when you see us in the rallies, when you see us in the protests, when you see us advocating for our voices to be heard, it's because our pain has no place to go. So as we talk about the social and emotional approaches to how we monitor our own health in this fight for freedom, in this fight for, I'm gonna say equity actually, instead of equality, we need to also tune in to the things that arise within us and take control of our own ability to release that ourselves. So the second thing I also want to talk about is grief, the concept of grief and the phases that we are going through, not just from a physical death, but the idea in this sense of loss, especially during our COVID period. So grief is something that manifests very differently for every person. There are some people that really need to, for example, a shortcut example is going to be, some people need to cry, some people need silence, some people need to be isolated, other people need to be around other people. And in the midst of a pandemic, when we have to implement certain measures such as social distancing and things of that nature, it becomes very difficult for us as communal people and us as people who enjoy the narrative process of our journeys. It's very difficult for us to integrate in the way that we're used to. So being creative and finding new ways and new innovative, maybe access through technology to call on a loved one, to call on someone that you haven't spoken to in a while, to reconnect in some capacity. Those things are going to be very crucial and important for us to heal during this time. And then the third thing that I wanted to cover is this idea of personal commitment. So as we're talking about racial justice and the approach for it, I want to talk about the first part of that, which is your daily capacity as for someone who may identify as an ally, and also for people who are in the struggle and at the bottom of the oppression that we're talking about here with these systemic issues. Checking in with your daily capacity on a daily basis. That daily word is very specific and very intentional. So if you wake up in the morning and you notice that you do not have enough energy to, I'm not going to say entertain, but engage with a lot of the rhetoric, a lot of the conversations, a lot of the issues that are happening right now for people who are in the struggle, take a step back, monitor your breathing, monitor what is happening within your body, because that first point that I made with tension with no place to go becomes pain. I'm going to say that again. Tension with no place to go becomes pain. So as we are in this struggle to fight for our advocacy, monitor the tension that exists within your body, because it will manifest into things that are more harmful. And then the second part, for the daily capacity of people who are identifying themselves as ally, I would like you to understand that allyship, this is also a phrase coming out of the University of Michigan from a student organization there. Allyship is a verb. So if you identify yourself as an ally, it is not something that you can call as a title and not act upon it. It is a verb. You have to put your heels in the ground and understand what is within your daily capacity to daily act as an ally to the Black and Brown community who are fighting for rights that have been long deserved, long overlooked, as we've discussed on this call.
Do you have suggestions for ways to check in with Black youth and parents that I work with as a white social worker? I want to check in without making people uncomfortable, so looking for some ideas.
Got you. Well, I think that we have to start with understanding what that person's relationship is with their students. If they have a naturally close relationship prior to these issues, I think that going off of the strength of that relationship to begin with is already an avenue to check in. For example, if there isn't a pre-existing close relationship with the teacher and their students, finding subtle ways that don't directly imply that you're only checking on them out of the convenience of what's happening. So creating genuine and authentic connections is very crucial and important. I think that we as people in general are able to, I think the healthiest way to put this is kind of peep when people are reaching out to us for very specific reasons and just out of the general cause of our mental health. So making sure that the approach is authentic, genuine, and coming from a place that is sourced from goodness and not attached to what is happening specifically around the area, because the things that are happening are not new. Specifically to us, we've seen it for years and years at a time. So though it may be new and something fresh to other people, it's not new and fresh to us. So making sure that when you try to establish that relationship with someone and check on the betterment and the well-being of them, you're doing it out of the authenticity that you care for them, not just based off of what is going on around us. Though those things are important, it may come up. Don't let that be the initial reason in the initial preface of what you include in it, because it's not new to us.
Thank you, Michelle, so much.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Jametta, back to you, and thank you for letting me interrupt, Jametta.
No, absolutely. That's how we roll. But I just want to say that we're Michelle, your point is so well taken, because we now see that there are tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of more people who better understand racial disparities, things that we've been talking about for decades, and in fact have had solutions for. The joy of this is that there are more people ready to act and move forward on the things that we know work. It's awesome. Thank you so much again.
I've been asked to share some tips for parents and how to assist children who may be grieving or who may have experienced some loss during this time. And so one of the things we have to think about is this is new for all of us, and it's as if somebody took a pop bottle and shook it up. And that's how a lot of us are feeling on the inside. One of the things I would say as a number one is patience, tolerance, and reassurance. Be patient with the kiddo. Just as it's new to us, it's new to them. And they're trying to figure out how to work this out. The second thing, be honest as you can. Oftentimes, depending on your culture or how you've been raised, you may use words like crossed over or passed on. This is the time to be realistic and honest. It's okay to use words such as dead, death, or died. We know that that does help the grieving process. Also, don't hide your tears. If you're feeling upset or you're feeling mad or angry, please share that. Let your children see that and talk with them about what is causing that feeling. The third thing, a lot of times we'll fall into the pitfall of taking away the daily routine, allowing them to get off track. We want to keep daily expectations clear, and we want to make sure that those routines continue. There's some comfort in having expectations and knowing what's to come during your day. So if they're doing chores, please allow them to continue to do the chores. And if you all don't have a routine, maybe pick a few things that you can do during the day that will give them some happiness, okay? The fourth thing, share your story. If there are times when you've been angry or you've been upset, or maybe you've experienced a loss close to you, share that. Help them to see how you were able to make it through. And it may give you a point of connection with your kid, especially if you're starting to isolate or having symptoms like nightmares or, other things like that. Number 5, be creative. Please allow them to share their feelings as they feel they need to. A lot of people will come up with rituals to help during the grief and loss process. That can look like lighting candles or planting flowers or doing some of the favorite things of that person that they've lost, watching movies or listening to music. But don't shy away from the fact that you have lost someone and that your child is hurt about it. And the last but not least, take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally. So if that's eating a well-balanced breakfast or just going out for a walk, please continue to take care of yourself. Parenting is hard, it is not easy, and we don't have a manual. So if you or your family are continuing to have any issues, you all can reach us at the Children's Center. We care. That number is 313-262-1212, or you can reach out to Detroit Wayne Access at 1-800-241-4949.
What would happen if everyone, including kids, wore masks? Is the virus spreading because people are not wearing masks?
The virus is spreading because it's trying to survive. It survives by getting into human tissue through the respiratory tract, reproducing itself, and then going to another person. So it's going to do that every opportunity it has. Things like staying home so you don't come in contact with other people, or everyone wearing a mask, which means that if I'm producing virus and I don't know it, if I have a mask on, that means no virus goes past that mask through my nose and mouth. So I cannot possibly put virus into the environment. So yes, wearing masks is a huge way of preventing ourselves from spreading it to someone else. It's not so much to protect, it does help to protect you from breathing in somebody else's virus, but most importantly, it helps you from spreading virus to other people. And it's a reminder to everyone that we are in the midst of a COVID pandemic that actually kills people.
What are your suggestions for keeping kids safe at summer camps or daycare?
I think that for children, letting them understand what we're in and why wearing a mask is so important. Children are much more responsible than often we give them credit to, or if they understand what's going on. So with summer camps and other things, I'll be honest, my children are adults, but if they were young or if I had grandchildren, I think at this point, unless it was absolutely critical, I would not put them in a summer camp. I would not put, as a matter of fact, if this may not be probably the right thing for me to say, but I'm going to be truthful. If I had young children, I would probably consider homeschooling them this year. And I know that's probably not what the Detroit Public Schools or any other school would want me to say, but as a virologist, I just believe the risk is very high. And based on what we're seeing around the country, Michigan is doing well, but other states are just not. And so I think we're all going to be in a much worse situation before it gets better. I hate to say that, but I think we are.
Do you anticipate a second wave?
The answer is yes. And let me qualify what I just said. I know that the school systems are working very, very hard to make return to school safe as possible. My own university, other universities are doing amazing things to try to guarantee as possible that people are safe. But as someone said, it's like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. We don't know what is going to happen with COVID, particularly when many governments and people are reopening in what some would consider a less than responsible way because of lack of national leadership. And so even if Michigan is doing well, someone traveling or coming from some other place can change things. So yes, I think we are going to have a second peak.
Are face shields better than face masks? If so, would schools consider face shields a way to protect our children when they go back to school?
Face shields are useful for people who are, say, on the front lines, like people at stores who are at registers, or people who are coming in contact with people. Shields, however, get hard to wear. They allow virus to escape or below the shield. So masks are better for the general public to wear because they're easier to do. And we just need to find the masks that are appealing to us in color or what they mean, and that they're comfortable, and learn how to use them. This is a normal part of life. This is going to be normal for us. And the sooner we get to that, the sooner we'll all get to a point where we'll feel better with it and we'll be a safer communities.
Many offices, folks are going back into their offices and folks are getting prepared to reopen. Our organization happens to be one. And people are installing air filters. Is this actually helpful? Will this help to filter out the virus?
It depends on the kind of filters. First of all, ideally people want to be outdoors if possible, but realizing that folks have to go indoors for many work situations. Keeping space between people such that there are not multiple people together with respiratory droplets. Secondly, the air circulation is a mixed bag. There are studies that show that air conditioning flow can move virus away from a person and let it circulate in a room, which allows someone else further away to inhale it. The filters will have to be particular filters that can, called HEPA filters, that filter virus. Not all filters do that. So a typical room air purifier might not have a HEPA filter that would be efficient in filtering virus. So it just depends on what kind of air purification system is there.
I've seen some news that Michigan is on track to contain the virus. Honestly, what good does that do if other cases are still going up?
If you look at other states, Ohio, Indiana, around us, Illinois, and you of course hear of the cases in Florida and Texas and California and Arizona, where the government has not been nearly as responsible and diligent, even in the midst of political pushback, as our government has been. You wonder what's going to happen. We unfortunately are not a United States at this point, and we cannot control what other states do. We can be as safe as possible in our own state and follow the guidelines such that if someone does have virus, whether they're from this state or they traveled in, if we are doing the things to prevent transmission, the rates will be low, and the contact tracing of those cases that do occur will be able to reduce a rise in infection. So we have to follow the guidelines. That's all we have at this point.
So are pregnant women considered high risk? How can they stay safe?
Yes, there are studies being done now about pregnancy and other conditions that could be affected by COVID. I'll just say here that anything that changes your immune function, your overall body's ability to deal with microbes or invading agents can affect COVID. So I think pregnant women, because they're undergoing all the changes, are in that higher susceptibility group. And the best thing you can do is to stay safe using the guidelines that have been put out there. Staying home when possible, using masks and sanitation if outside, avoiding people, and getting lots of rest so that our immune system, even if we are exposed, if our immune system is good and in good shape and robust, having vitamin C and vitamin D, just making sure that we get plenty of sleep. Those things can help our immune system fight off an exposure to not only COVID, but anything else. But it's particularly important right now to care for yourself such that you keep your defenses strong. That's for everyone, but particularly someone who's pregnant or has underlying conditions.
Is there anything else you'd like to share based on the data about the potential impact for the upcoming school year in the event that we all can't homeschool?
No, and I understand we all cannot homeschool, and I maybe should not have said that, but I'm
no, it's okay.
a truthful person and pretty straightforward.
No, it's good. Truth is good. Go ahead.
So yes, I think the one thing we can all do is such that when our kids do go back to school, the virus is as low as possible, is to remain diligent now, because what we do now will affect what's going to happen in the next 6 weeks, which is going to determine where we are at the beginning of school time. And so the thing I would emphasize is that we have to stay diligent. Even if our governor opens things up, that doesn't mean we have to open our churches or we have to open our bars or we have to go to restaurants. And if we are out, always wear a mask. I cannot overemphasize that. Wear a mask to protect others, to protect yourself, and to send the message that we are in a COVID pandemic, a respiratory virus. Those things will help us later to have the lowest amount of possible exposures.
So thank you, Dr. Fuller, so much. That you're a wealth of information.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my absolute honor and pleasure to hold this space for you as a mom, as a community member, and as a healer. And so it's been kind of coming back to me that there's some questions about yoga and whether or not the yogic practices are meant to keep us in a passive place. And I'm here to let you know that I breathe sometimes for the cause I fight, because every tool is a weapon if you use it right. Thank you, Ana DeFranco. In this time where we have yet again witnessed the death that was preambled by the words, "I can't breathe." Know that when you cannot breathe, you cannot have access to the ability to move your power forward from a conscious place. And so in this time when we are all feeling absolutely exhausted on top of exhausted, we have to think about self-care and restoration as the revolutionary act that's going to absolutely allow us to harness and channel our power in the direction that we want it to go. So in those moments when we are offered strategies that allow us to get grounded by placing your feet flat on the earth and sitting up straight so that you can take a full breath in, it is absolutely so that we can then move forward with a clear mind in order to direct our power where we want it to go. Let's do a little experiment. When I say go, what I invite you to do is to make a shape with your body where your torso is bent and everything is clenched and tight. Make sure that you are folded or twisted or bent in some way, right? And anybody who's on the line who's willing to open the camera so people know that I'm not the only one doing this, I invite you to do that now. And while we're getting into that position, right, I want you to try to breathe. Notice what it's like to attempt to breathe when your back is tight, your neck is tight, your fist is tight. Stay there a little bit longer. Stay a little bit longer. And now release it, let it go, sit up tall. And now try to breathe. What do you notice? This were a lesson in school, I would invite us to a Venn diagram where we would compare and contrast the difference between what it's like to try to breathe and to think when your body is clenched and what it's like to breathe and think when your body is relaxed. This is why it's important to be able to pay attention to where you are. In my practice as a yoga teacher and a yoga therapist, the reason why we want you to be able to have access to your breath is so that you can make a conscious decision about where to direct your power next. Experiment number 2. Take a nice easy breath in, bring all of your energy in towards your body, and then now as you exhale, press it away. And notice what that's like. Try it again. Choose another direction. Inhale and exhale. Choose another direction. And again, inhale and exhale. And rest your bodies. In that moment, you were able to make a series of improvisational decisions in the moment, right? Because you were clear-minded and could focus your attention and awareness to send that energy, that power in the simple movement of your arms anywhere you wanted to go. The reason why we practice now is because one of my great teachers says, the time to learn to swim is not when we are drowning. It is not a good idea. So we practice knowing where we are and sitting up straight and tall and taking a nice easy breath in and filling and fueling our mind and body to relax, to restore, so that when we return from the fight, We don't stay clenched and tight. We'll be too exhausted for the next one. And there's another one coming in, and I need everybody ready. So right here, right now, together as a whole community, once again, take a nice easy breath in. And as you exhale, blow it out.
Okay.
Peace.
Let's listen to the Consul General of Mexico in Detroit, Fernando González Saife, with a very special message to our community.
Hello, it's a pleasure to address the Detroit and Michigan Hispanic community. I am Fernando González Saife, Consul of Mexico in Detroit, representing Michigan and the northern part of Ohio. I want to thank BHDC, DTE Energy, Detroit Public Television, el Comité Patriótico Mexicano, and all the organizations that make this celebration possible. Tonight, I am asked to reflect on the Cinco de Mayo celebration, its meaning, a brief history, and what this celebration represents for the Mexican and the Hispanic community today. In Mexico, the Cinco de Mayo, also known as La Batalla de Puebla, it's a Mexican national holiday in when Mexicans reflect in our history. In the US, the celebration is much more festive, consisting of parades, music, folklore, dances, and food. When you are a Mexican living in the US, you are surprised when, on your first Cinco de Mayo, everybody starts congratulating you. Happy Cinco de Mayo, Fernando. People told me the first time I came to the US. I didn't know at the beginning if I should explain that the Cinco de Mayo is not our Independence Day, which is actually on September 16th. Over the years, I've come to understand why Cinco de Mayo is so important and why it's celebrated so much in the US. The first answer, of course, is the density of the Mexican and Mexican-American population in the US. According to several studies, the Mexican population in the US is around 35 million people, out of which 13 million people were born in Mexico. Today, Cinco de Mayo is used also as a symbol to represent the cohesion of the Mexican communities in the US. And it also highlights the solidarity among the Mexican Americans. Why? Because on May 5th, 1862, 2,000 poorly trained Mexican peasants under the command of General Ignacio Zaragoza fiercely fought and won the Battle of Puebla against a regiment of around 6,000 French soldiers under the command of Napoleon III, the most powerful army of the world at that time. Now, Cinco de Mayo is a symbol that when Mexicans unite, nothing can defeat us. Today, Cinco de Mayo is also celebrated by Mexican and Mexican Americans everywhere. In Mexico, actually, several towns reenact the Battle of Puebla in a long day celebration. And in the US, Cinco de Mayo is an opportunity to celebrate Mexican and Hispanic culture. And it's actually celebrated with Mexican music, dance, food, customs, sport activities, fireworks, and entertainment. We are also happy to see that today our celebration is joined by people of all races and religions that come with us to enact and celebrate our culture and presence in the US. This event is one way in which people celebrate also the friendship between the US and Mexico, and represents a symbol of Mexican unity and patriotism. With this victory, Mexico demonstrated to the world that Mexico was willing to defend itself of any foreign intervention. Interesting fact as well, when the battle was won, many French were killed or wounded, and their cavalry was being chased by Diaz horsemen miles away. The Mexicans had won a great victory that kept Napoleon III from supplying the Confederate rebels for another year, allowing the US to build the greatest army the world had ever seen. This grand army smashed the Confederates at Gettysburg just 14 months after the Battle of Puebla, essentially ending the Civil War. Union forces were then rushed to the Texan-Mexican border under General Phil Sheridan, who made sure that the Mexicans got all the weapons and ammunition they needed to expel the French. American soldiers were discharged, wore their uniforms and rifles, if they promised to join the Mexican army to fight the French. The American Legion of Honor marched in the Victory Parade in Mexico City. Is it a historical stretch to credit the survival of the United States to those brave 4,000 Mexicans who faced an army twice as large in 1862? But who knows? In gratitude, thousands of Mexicans crossed the border after Pearl Harbor to join the US Armed Forces. And as recently as the Persian Gulf War, Mexicans flooded American consulates with phone calls, trying to join up and fight another war with the US. Mexicans, you see, never forget who their friends are, and neither do Americans. That's why Cinco de Mayo is such a party that celebrates freedom and liberty. These are two ideals which Mexicans and Americans have fought shoulder to shoulder to protect ever since the 5th of May, 1862. Viva el Cinco de Mayo.
So family, we won't be with you for the next 2 weeks. Again, we're preparing, reviewing materials, but we would love for you to know that behind this coalition, every week, 14 weeks, there's an entire cast of DPTV and our translators that are always coming together to make these programs happening. So what I would love is when everybody would light up on the screen. Let's see all of the folks that are on this particular production. We've got Molly Sweeney, our backbone with 4824. We've got Cindy Gamboa. We have, where did you go, Saeed Dada, who is our Arabic translator. We have Marty Fiskoff, who is our representative all the time with our DPTV team. And I'm looking, and where are you? There you are, Saeed Dada, and also Julie Paletti. So, and we have some other folks that are with us. Hi, Zach, and hi, Bill from DPTV. Happy you're here. So everyone, we're ending this program by letting you know that we want you to stay safe, to stay strong, and be blessed. So I'm going to ask each one of our interpreters if they would share that closing with us. Cindy, would you please?
Manténganse saludables, manténganse seguros y que estén bendecidos.
Thank you. Saeed, would you share in Arabic, please?
حافظ على صحتك، كن ثابتا ومتينا، وابقى قويا. إلى اللقاء.
Thank you. And Julie, would you share as well? And with that, peace, power, stay strong. Goodbye. Everyone.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.